Today is a very exciting day as I've got the On Cloudboom Strike in my hands and I finally managed to log some miles in it. So without further ado, let's jump into some of the juicy tech and updates that you can find on On's latest marathon racer. First and foremost then, let's rattle through some numbers with the On Cloudboom Strike. And although I don't have exact stack height measurements from On, I'm assuming we've got a max stack of 40mm here in the heel, and there's a 4mm drop, so that's obviously going to be 36mm in the forefoot. The midsole itself is made up of On's premium Helion Hyperfoam, which I believe is a PEBA-based midsole compound. And on the scales, these bad boys are coming in my UK 8.5 at right around 210 grams. So very, very respectable there as well. Starting with the upper then, we've got this one-piece construction. It's pretty traditional for super shoe standards, but it is incredibly lightweight and minimal. And just based off the texture and the feel of it in hand, it does also feel like it's going to be hydrophobic and not hold on to too much water, which is a good thing, especially if you live in the UK or are training through winter months for your upcoming marathon. As far as the tongue is concerned, it is fully gusseted and you've got stitching on all three sides. It's pretty thin. There is a little bit of excess material at the end, this sort of stretchy stuff, which, you know, it bunches a little bit when you lace up the shoe, but for me, it hasn't caused any issues when it comes to comfort, which is the main thing. On the topic of the laces, they have got this lovely rubberized coating to them, and you might have noticed how other brands are using serrated laces with knobbly notches on them to avoid them coming undone. On have gone for this rubberized approach, which I personally really like. But the only thing to mention is they are very, very long. It's not a problem necessarily, just an observation, but you might find, like I did, that you have to do a couple of extra knots to make sure that they're not dangling about whilst you're running. As far as the heel counter is concerned, there's minimal padding, but you have got these two nice little strips on both the lateral and medial side of the heel. Around the Achilles area, there's not much in the way of padding there, but as of today's first run, I didn't have any issues with rubbing or discomfort on the Achilles, so all good in that regard. As you'll be able to see, every attempt has been made here to cut the weight down with the upper, so there's plenty of holes punched in all over the gaff, but I should mention that there are some really dedicated areas of added structure and support with the shoe, mainly in this kind of section here towards the midfoot and on the inside of the shoe, as you'd expect, just to keep that foot locked in when you are running with a high stack shoe and a very soft, compliant midsole underfoot. Finally, taking a look at the outsole, pretty simple rubber configuration here and not excessive amounts of it, but just enough in the key high wearing areas of the shoe. We've got a couple strips in the heel, which is customary on super shoes these days, and then a nice little slab in the forefoot area of the shoe as well. It's a fairly thin coating, so I'll be curious to see how this holds up over time. But so far, after my initial run in the shoe this morning, no real signs that would bring me any kind of concerns or apprehension about the shoe. Only other thing to mention when you take a look at the outsole is the groove or kind of decoupling that you've got going on. Now, this is going to help with stability. It will just enable each side of the shoe to compress independently. But also, obviously, cutting out parts of a midsole is going to help with weight saving as well. So it's a nice little double whammy of benefits there. So those are the basics, but for me, the most exciting and innovative part of the Cloudboom Strike is without a doubt the drop-in insole. And if I just pull it out, give us a minute. So this is the drop-in insole, and as you can see, there's a considerable amount of stack height in the forefoot region of this insole specifically. And the whole thought process behind this and the whole innovation around it is the fact that with the Cloudboom Strike, there are no non-performance materials in the shoe. Traditionally, with a running shoe, you'll have an insole, you'll have a strobel board, but when it comes to a super shoe specifically, where you really want to get the maximum amount of cushioning underfoot all the way up to that 40mm limit, once you start implementing those things into the shoe, those materials into the shoe, you can actually have quite a dramatic variance in the stack height. So the true stack height underfoot whilst you're running in the shoe could only be 35, 36 mil rather than right up to that 40mm limit. So I absolutely love when a brand get really innovative and bring something new to the table. So this is very exciting for me, and I'm particularly looking forward to seeing how it can be implemented into other iterations of the shoe going forwards, but also perhaps other shoes in the range, not just super shoes. What's also really interesting is the fact that with the drop-in insole removed, you can actually see right down onto the plate itself. So you're very much connected to the shoe in that regard, and you definitely feel that underfoot whilst you're running in it too. Visually, this also creates a pretty interesting effect where with the drop-in insole there, it's almost like a double midsole, like a negative sidewall going on, where you've got this layer from the insole straight onto the actual midsole of the shoe itself. So it creates an incredibly soft, plush, pleasant, compressive experience underfoot on that initial ground contact. Now then, all of that innovation, all of the R&D and the sciencey stuff that's gone into the production of this shoe is all well and good, but it also obviously has to translate to actual performance. And so I was lucky enough to be out in St. Moritz earlier in the year, shooting some stuff with the OAC Europe squad. And whilst we were out there, managed to get hands-on with an earlier prototype version of the Cloudboom Strike. It was a little bit different to the final production version that I've got in my hands here now, but I was still able to take it out for some 400 meter reps around the track and get some initial first impressions of it. And then this morning, I ran a pretty solid 10K progression in this final production version of the Cloudboom Strike as well. Positioning wise, the Cloudboom Strike is definitely catered more towards the longer distances on the road, so your half and full marathon, mainly due to the softness of that foam, but also just the overall sensation of running at that kind of marathon type effort. I don't want to put too much emphasis on the first session that I did in the pre-release prototype version of the shoe in St. Moritz, but this morning as a 10K progression run was a really nice test to see how the shoe felt through a variety of different paces for myself. So I think I started right around 420s maybe, and then got down to 330-ish by the last couple of K. So for me, that's easy pace all the way down to half marathon type pace by the end. So like I say, a good, solid, fair test. I think first of all, the thing to mention is that this is definitely a shoe that feels better the more you put into it, which sounds obvious, but this is not a shoe that you want to be doing your easy jogging in. It felt okay for the first couple of K of that progression run, but it was really once I got down to 4-minute Ks, under 4-minute Ks, that it really came to life and started to shine. It's pretty hard to compare the feeling underfoot and the softness and compliancy that you get in the forefoot region of the shoe to anything else out there. But if anybody's watching this video who's got the Cloudboom Echo 3, running that shoe, enjoyed that shoe, this is a completely different beast. It feels completely different to that shoe. I think the Cloudboom Echo 3 was a great option for shorter reps on the road for me. It felt a bit firmer, a bit more direct, a bit more responsive, decent for track sessions even, but this is absolutely a quintessential marathon pace cruiser. It feels delicious once you're rolling at that marathon, half marathon type effort, whereas the Cloudboom Echo 3 was probably a little bit on the aggressive side for me personally in that regard. I feel like a little bit of a broken record because these days most brands are coming out with seriously top tier contenders in the super shoe arena. But with the Cloudboom Strike, I feel like On have firmly cemented themselves right back in that conversation and have got themselves a bona fide super shoe when it comes to that marathon or half marathon distance. So there we go. That's just about going to do it for this review of the On Cloudboom Strike. I have thoroughly enjoyed my time in it so far. I will absolutely be banking some more sessions in it in the not too distant future. And I would seriously consider racing in it for any distance from 10K up to the full marathon. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Make sure to drop a like if you did. Subscribe to the channel, turn your notifications on, all of that jazz. And if you want to get your feet in a pair of the On Cloudboom Strike, you can do so right now at Pro Direct Running.